What's going on, everyone? I am back again today to do another episode breakdown of Overlord Season 1. Today we are going to be covering Episode 7, which is the third episode of Volume 2, the Dark Warrior arc. I know it's been a long time. We've had all these One Piece videos that I've made, and also I wanted to make that video on the Overlord movie information, but we are now getting back into the swing of things of the episode breakdowns. So I have to say, when I first read the light novel for this part of the anime, I was shocked at what was actually removed. I mean, there is an entire fight sequence in the light novel that is removed from the anime. It's actually kind of disappointing. You're a little more critical of the anime after you read the light novel when you realize what was cut out in this section, but I'll get to that later. Let's go in sequential order here. So starting off, we have that opening scene with these Swords of Darkness on their way to Karn, and this is following the previous night's kind of tension-filled conversation between Nina and Ainz about, bringing up the old comrades thing. Ainz is thinking this whole time that he knows he's being immature, and he views Nina as a kid, so he knows that holding on to his anger about what Nina brought up the previous night is childish, and he should try to get over it. He just doesn't want to take the initiative to repair the awkwardness of the situation. So the interesting thing that's brought up by Nina in this scene is they mention dragons for the first time. And this is the first mention of dragons in the New World. And we also, in the light novel, get Ainz's perspective on dragons. In Yggdrasil, dragons were the ultimate species. They were some overpowered raid bosses sometimes, and you could make super crazy good items out of dragon materials. Dragons were very, very strong, even for level 100 players to deal with. So Ainz is very curious about the existence of dragons in the New World, and he found out from interrogating the Sunlit Scripture as well that dragons were considered the most powerful species on the continent. Dragon lords are very, very powerful in the New World as well, so that kind of goes in line with that thinking. Basically, dragons in the New World and in Yggdrasil, both very, very strong. So then we get on to the actual arrival at Karn, and this is pretty much the same. And something that's explained in the light novel is that once the goblins reveal themselves, they've pretty much taken Peter, the leader, kind of hostage, but all of them are pretty sure they can still get out of it because they know goblins. They know what goblins are capable of, and goblins typically are weaker physically than humans are. However, something that crosses their minds when they see these goblins is that these goblins, compared to the ones they've run into before, are definitely more beefy, they're more muscular, they definitely seem to have more skills, they're more intelligent. According to the Swords of Darkness, the gear that the goblins are wearing is also comparable to their own, so they're also equipped pretty well. The Swords of Darkness realize immediately that these goblins could be way stronger than the ones that they're used to dealing with, so they have to prepare for that, and there's about to be a confrontation going on. That just goes to show you that the goblins that are summoned by the horn that Ainz gave to Enri in the previous arc, those goblins are of higher quality than just wild ones you'd see in the New World. So then we go on to that scene between Enfiria and Enri, which is from Enfiria's point of view in the light novel. The entire time that this conversation between Enri and Enfiria is going on is there's this air of jealousy that Enfiria is having every time Enri talks about Ainz Ulgon. Every sentence after Enri says something about Ainz, the light novel just states Enfiria felt something in his stomach. It's just this constant feeling of jealousy is coming up. But the conversation overall is pretty much the same. We just get a lot more of those details about what's going on, what Enfiria is actually thinking. And also at this point in the series, this kind of seems like a one-sided romance. Sadly, poor Enfiria. Oh man, takes me back to my teenage years. A smaller thing that was changed from anime to light novel was that Enfiria is actually the one who brings up Albedo. He is thinking okay, in both scenarios, it was a warrior in black armor and a magic caster. And so Enfiria asks Enri, was the warrior that Ainz was with, was her name Albedo? So basically in the light novel, Enfiria is able to kind of wheedle his way through the information himself. It's a small detail, but that just goes to show you, I guess it just emphasizes Enfiria's deductive reasoning, I guess a little bit more in the light novel. He basically just develops a huge inferiority complex to Ainz in this moment, because he's just okay, Ainz is this this crazy magic caster, but he's also this adamantite level warrior. Like, how can I compete with a guy like that? So then we move on to the next scene, and this is where we get some kind of juicy information because it's about players. So Ainz and Narbril are observing the villagers who are learning how to use weapons. The conversation between Ainz and Narbril is pretty much the same. However, we have this whole section of internal dialogue in the light novel where Ainz starts thinking about levels. I know a lot of you guys love talking about levels, but something Ainz thinks about is how experience works now that he's been transferred to the new world. I came here at the cap of 100, but I had banked experience points where it would be 90% of a level up. He was thinking, okay, is it possible for me to gain the experience points I could get to level 101? And Ainz kind of basically has this internal feeling that he's at his peak. He can't grow any more powerful. Like he basically deduces that just from like feeling, I don't know, it's just like something that comes up in his mind, while everyone in the new world can still grow. And something that comes up in this thinking is Ainz starts thinking about these 6 great gods, which he's now aware about because of interrogating the Sunlit Scripture members. And Ainz at this point he doesn't have proof, but he heavily suspects that the 6 great gods were players. And something Ainz thinks about is that what if the 6 great gods power leveled? Like the New World inhabitants, which is, if a weaker player can gain experience faster by assisting a stronger player in like taking down something stronger. And he knows the 6th great god arrived 600 years ago. So like he thinks, okay, there were races in Yggdrasil and classes that had like crazy lifespans. So like these people could still be alive. They could have been power leveling the Slain Theocracy for 600 years. But then he's like, okay, if that's the case, why hasn't the Slain Theocracy taken over the world? Because they probably could have if they were doing that. There's just too many what ifs in this situation. There's too many things Ainz doesn't have confirmation on, and he is just like, okay, I need to make intelligence gathering my #1 priority. That is the top thing we have to do because I just have too many questions. There's too many possibilities. But basically, once again, this is going back to a point I've previously elaborated on, that other players, the presence of other players and the actions of other players is Ainz's like biggest fear and priority right now. He is trying to definitely figure out what is going on. Are there any other players? What influences have other players had on the world? I need to find that out. And then we have the conversation between Enfiria and Ainz, which is pretty much exactly the same. I don't really have much to add from the light novel on that point. Something that does stick out in my mind is that when Enfiria admits to Ainz that he's in love with Enri, Ainz has to suppress the thought of, he calls it the traditional older guy thought of love. Oh, well, live it up while you're young, kiddo, something like that. And I guess maybe I'm a decade off from having those thoughts myself. But then we move on to the next scene where they actually enter the forest. And one of the big things that comes up before they split up is Ainz starts finding out more about how potions are made. Dine and Enfiria start having a conversation about the herbs they're going to gather, which are used as potion ingredients. So basically at this point, Ainz is learning, okay, the potion making process is different than it was in Yggdrasil, because in Yggdrasil, he had never done it himself, but he did know you could use like alchemical ingredients to make potions in Yggdrasil, but he hadn't heard of anyone using herbs. And also in Yggdrasil, in order to make potions, you had to have a specific skill that only certain classes could get. And then you also had to know the spell that you wanted to put in the potion. Once again, showing the juxtaposition of this was what it was in the game, which is, a little more just kind of like poof, you have a potion, versus real life where you actually have to make shit. So then we move on to the section where we get to the introduction of the Wise King of the Forest. There is a little more build up to that. This comes up, you see it more in season 2. But they are already at this point, setting up the base in the forest that you see being constructed all throughout season 2 and everything. They give a lot of details in the light novel, which they kind of just breeze. Oh, like I can't even really remember them talking about it at all. Already upset the power balance in the forest. This comes up, I believe, in season 3 when they talk about the demon, snake, and the giant. Their actions at this point, this early on in the series, are already disrupting the natural, ecosystem of the forest, which I feel like is not explained pretty much at all in the anime. But that's what Aura's doing there, and Aura has come along because Ainz wanted to look into the Wise King of the Forest, and Aura is a beast tamer and ranger, and so Aura goes off by herself, which they show in the anime, and we get a little more details on Aura. So what's said in the light novel is that Aura is one of the weakest floor guardians in Nazarick, but that's just talking about her individually. Aura wasn't designed to be like a one-on-one fighter. Like that's not how she operates. Her whole strength is her pack, is her animals that she has tamed. They say in the light novel that she has this whole pack of level 80 monsters, but with her skills, they're more like level 90s. So like her whole thing is to swarm enemies with like a multiple, opponents that are all like pretty strong, plus herself, and enhancing them, buffing them, and doing all this other stuff. Aura may individually be, one of the weakest floor guardians, but Aura with her pack could probably accomplish more than like a lot of the individual floor guardians could by themselves, So not really a huge important point, but it does explain a little more about like how the power scaling of floor guardians works. So moving on, we then finally have the scene between Ainz and Hamsky, which is butchered in the anime. I didn't know this until I read the light novel. Hamsky is female. I don't know if they mentioned that. They probably do in the anime. I guess I don't know why I assumed it was male, but Hamsky's female, just something to point out in case you didn't know. But anyway, so Ainz asked Hamsky, like, are you a hamster by chance? And in the anime, Hamsky says, yes, I am. But in the light novel, Hamsky's like, oh, I've been alone my entire life. Like, I have no idea what species I am. And they have a whole conversation in the light novel that's kind of back and forth. I want to, reproduce and everything like that. And Ainz is like, oh, well, I mean, like, you don't have to do that. And Hamsky's like, I've been alone my whole life. Like, I want to make friends and things like that. Ainz just kind of feels a little sad about that. There's this whole different dynamic going on than what's presented in the anime. It's more comedic in the anime, whereas in the light novel, Ainz kind of like relates to Hamsky a little bit in this moment because of what she's saying about like, I've been alone. I don't have anyone that's like me. And Ainz is just kind of like resonates with that. And so now we get on to the majorly omitted content. Is in the light novel, there is an entire battle sequence between Hamsky and Ainz, and they just completely remove that from the anime, and I thought that was a little lame. Because there's this whole fight sequence where Hamsky and Ainz are kind of just like trading blows. They pretty much trade blows for a little while. And then something that is never shown in the anime is that Hamsky can use magic. After trading blows for a little while, Ainz starts realizing, okay, Hamsky's fur, like I can't cut into it. It's like the fur itself is a weapon. And Hamsky casts Charm Species, which is something that you see later on in season 4 when Shaltir charms the Quagua, and that's a psychic, spell which undead have immunity to. So Ainz just completely ignores it. But yeah, Hamsky can cast magic, which is something I think anime onlys wouldn't know, because I don't believe she ever uses magic ever in the anime. And something that happens when Hamsky uses magic is those markings on her, which once again, I think this is the only scene in the anime where the markings that are on her body even show up. But whenever Hamsky uses magic, one of those markings lights up on her body. And what Ainz believes is that those markings on Hamsky's body corresponds to different spells. Because later in the fight, Hamsky casts Blindness, which is like a flashbang type spell. And that would affect Ainz, that like Ainz doesn't have a natural immunity to that, but because of a skill, Ainz just completely nullifies it because it's low level. So you have to have, it's like his physical nullification. You have to have spells of a certain level in order to even like damage Ainz at all. But a different mark lights up on Hamsky's body when she uses Blindness. So Ainz is like, okay, so these lights correspond to the spells that Hamsky can use. Before I read the light novel, I had no idea that Hamsky could even use magic. So Hamsky is a hybrid, can fight physically, has physical abilities and things like that. And we know later on that she learns martial arts, but she also can use tear magic. So she's hybrid. And that's something that is cool. I don't know, that's just interesting. And what actually happens in the light novel, why Ainz loses interest, is because Hamsky's hit him with these spells and everything, and has hit him once, and Ainz has pretty much nullified all the spells and the damage and whatever, and Hamsky hasn't really put 2 and 2 together that Ainz isn't a warrior. And Ainz is disappointed that oh, you're called the wise king of the forest, but he's just like, I would have hoped you would have figured out by now that I'm not just a warrior. And so he decides to use Aura of Despair, and he initially had it on 5, but he toned it down to 1 because 5 has a chance of insta-death, which Ainz said in the light novel would be overkill. So he just does 1, which does fear status. And that, of course, instantly takes Hamsky, which they do show in the anime. But man, I just thought it was lame. They cut out an entire action sequence, which, I think at this point in the arc is something that would have been a good change of pace, you know, a little more action sequences. You know, there's been a lot of just talking and, you know, kind of moving around. So at least a small action sequence would have, you know, changed the vibe a little bit of the show. And it's a shame they cut it. And something that they leave out of the anime because they didn't include that conversation is the reason Ainz spares Hamsky's life is because of the conversation they had about friends, you know, and everything like that. And like, oh yeah, Hamsky is lonely. And, you know, Ainz is lonely too. So he relates to Hamsky and is just like, okay, you know what? If you swear loyalty to me, I'll let you live and you can join me. The whole reasoning behind that in the light novel is because of that conversation which they removed. So like it feels like every action in the anime just is like more the motivations are all different in the anime. So like you just view this scene through a whole different lens once you have that context from the light novel. But anyway, then we have the scene where he goes back to the Swords of Darkness with Hamsky, and you know, this is more of just a comedic relief scene. And it's funny because in the light novel, Ainz is just like is everyone's perception like what is up with this world is really what Ainz says. He even asks him in the light novel, like, how do you guys view rats? Like, are rats something crazy? And they're like, no, rats are gross. But, you know, this thing is cool. Ainz is just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, what is happening? It's kind of it's comedic in the anime, but I feel like it's funny in the light novel because Ainz is just like, I don't even know what's happening right now. But the final scene is going back to Irantel from Karn. They have completed their mission, and so Ainz has to register Hamsky with the guild because all magical beasts need to be registered with the guild if they're owned by adventurers. Ainz is really uncomfortable riding Hamsky like through the town, and he's just like, oh my god, like what is wrong with you people? Like, I'm riding a hamster. Like, do you guys not get this? Because they're all like staring at him with awe. And something also that's presented in the light novels is that Ainz isn't used to people praising him and stuff like that, and it's something he's had to get used to. And it's one of the things he's grateful for that he's undead, that's suppressing his emotions, because like he's just kind of like nervous about always receiving praise, which is something he never really got in his real life. And it's just more comedic relief, I guess, because then we have them, you know, the other members of the Swords of Darkness going back to escort Neferia, and they run into Clementine. Once again, in the light novel, this is like mid-paragraph where they just stop. It's just kind of an odd stopping point, I guess, for me. When you're reading it in the light novel, it's just like, oh yeah, hit the send. Oh wait, that's where the episode ends. Okay, so it's just weird. But anyway, guys, that sums up this episode breakdown comparing episode 7 of season 1 of Overlord to the light novel. So I gotta say, a little disappointed with this one in the anime adaptation, just cutting out a whole fight, changing the whole context of the events that take place in this moment with Hamsky and Ainz. I don't know, I feel like in this episode in particular, you are missing out on a lot if you didn't read the light novel. I mean, also we get to talk about the 6 great gods and anything about past players, anything at all, even if it's just a little tidbit. You know, I want to know about that stuff. Once again, the light novel just vastly superior in terms of information than you're gonna get from the anime. So guys, next time we're gonna be covering episode 8. So if you enjoyed this video and you want to see another one, please like the video to let me know. What did you guys think about the information that was missed? Are you disappointed that they cut out an entire fight scene that was in the light novel? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I always want to hear from you guys. And if you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out more than you know, and it'll let you know when I post in the future. With that being said, I want to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.